Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric. I got a fun and random episode for you guys this Friday, because about a month and a half ago I talked about the current state of emulation of the Hyper Neo Geo in MAME, and a lot of improvements have come fast and quick. I'm so impressed to see all the active interest for the Hyper Neo Geo 64, and the core developer MAME has done some updates that are going to make everything seem so much better. And the best part is one of the games that really wasn't working before is 100% promoted to working at this point in time. But I will say that it's great to get Hyper Neo Geo in MAME because this hardware is huge, it is cumbersome, it's a gigantic pain in the butt to deal with, and honestly it's getting so much more expensive these days. I bought all of this stuff very cheaply, and now all of a sudden it is a fortune. And if you don't feel like modding hardware to make things work, having Hyper Neo Geo 64 in MAME is going to be amazing. But right off the top, the number one improvement is going to be Buriki One. There's been some improvements to the intro sequence, which is always fun to see what's going on with an arcade game and the story, but the real improvements are going to come when you actually get into the game. Because previously I said unfortunately Buriki One was unplayable in MAME. That has 100% changed. You can see here I'm just playing Buriki One. Now you'll have to forgive my performance because I'm just using a controller, and Buriki One uses a custom stick setup that I do have for my board, and I'll have to transpose that into MAME soon. But I did send some original captures to MAME, the developer, and I'm not taking credit for these improvements, I just send information where I can. But now you can 100% play Buriki One in MAME with no issues, because previously this is what you ended up getting. Graphical layering issues. That Jumbotron is in front of the characters, so unless you turn the camera in the game, you just can't see what's going on. Now, that is not an issue at all. As far as I can tell, compared to my original hardware, all of the graphic layers are exactly where they should be, which makes the game 100% playable. If we take a look at original hardware, you can see it's a little bit darker because it is an arcade capture, but everything is appearing exactly as it should in both original hardware and on MAME in the current build, so that is spectacular. Even the character intro sequences work. So now you can play Buriki One in MAME. I will leave you a link to the revision below, but this is spectacular. That means all 7 Hyper Neo Geo games are at least playable. Now moving on to my absolutely favorite Hyper Neo Geo game of all time, Beastbuster 64. Last time I said it was playable, but it had a lot of issues. Now heads up, the audio has not really been improved. These are all graphical improvements, so you're probably still going to want to mute these games because the audio is quite rough, but it has nothing to do with these improvements. This is what it used to look like on MAME when I did a video about 6 weeks ago. You can see the scores falling behind those clouds, so we have no heads-up display. Now on the current version of MAME, and I left the blood green so you could see the difference, all of the heads-up display is exactly where it should be. All of those layering issues have been 100% fixed. It is just spectacular, but that wasn't the only issue with Beastbusters last time. When I showed you the intro on original hardware, you saw that that bus was fully layered with all of its polygons, but on the revision of MAME I tested on last time, that bus is basically mostly missing. Good news, it's all back. This looks spectacular, it looks exactly like Beastbusters I know and remember, so now you can play the game from start to finish and see all of the graphics where they should be. Now it does still seem to be that there is some speed differences between original hardware and MAME. We've got original on the left and MAME on the right, and it does seem like maybe MAME is running like 5% faster in spots, but that is very late work, I would assume, trying to get all of the timings correct. But as far as the graphics are concerned in Beastbusters, they just work now. You can play this game from start to finish, and trust me, it is exceedingly rare. If you can even find one to buy these days, bring your checkbook. You're going to be well over $1,000 for the motherboard and board itself, and I'm guessing that's going to go to $2,000 soon. Now onto the driving front, some of the games previously you'll see those wheels are blue and pink. Now that would be a spectacular look for an actual car, but that's not how the game was supposed to look. But in Round Trip RV, in the current MAME build, you can see all of those tires have gone back to black, exactly like you would expect a tire to look in real life. And I will say that this game seems to be running better as well, both graphically, and it also seems to be performance-wise a little bit faster. Before I saw some lag issues here. I don't know if maybe I'm just perceiving something or it was my system resources, but this game again is playing exactly how I would expect it to play. And that is spectacular because the racing game's also extremely hard to find, very rare cabinets, and you need a special I/O board to run them. And not many people are going to be as dumb as I am to actually do that at home. But now you can play this game in MAME, and all of those graphical issues are basically fixed. The only thing that really seems to need doing at this point in time is the sound emulation. Now there might be a little variation between real hardware and the capture, but I can't tell, so you probably can't either. Let's move over to Offbeat Racer, my favorite of the two Neo Geo driving games, and again in the current version of MAME, spectacular, running great. And from that gameplay perspective, I really can't tell any performance difference between my original Hyper Neo Geo hardware for this game and what is running on MAME. And I'm just giving you guys a hot lap here, one full lap, so you can see exactly how it's running. Now it does still seem to be maybe 3 to 5% faster than original hardware, but I am sure that will get taken care of later on. But if you want to play Offbeat Racer today, you can just load it up in the current build of MAME and you can play it, and that is absolutely spectacular. Because this, just like Beastbusters, is an exceedingly rare game. It took me 2 years to find a cartridge for it, and now anyone can experience it in MAME, and that's why I love preservation so much. You shouldn't just have to go look for the original hardware if you want to experience a game, especially a rare one like this. And now you can just play it in MAME with a controller, and hopefully some sound improvements do come soon, because it really does have a great soundtrack, but I'm not going to let you listen to scratches and clicks. I will say that every once in a while some effects are not tied together though. You'll see here in MAME, in a second I'm going to go into a tunnel that should have some fog, and all that generates is this very strange glitching pattern. It's just one feature of the Hyper Neo Geo 64 that might not be complete in MAME yet, but as soon as you get out of that fog area it will disappear. Now if we move over to original hardware, you can see what it should look like. And that is why original hardware captures are so important, because core developers can see exactly what's going on. And you'll see here that fog has that kind of gradient from thick to lighter on the bottom of the screen, and then it dissipates as you come out of that tunnel. So there's a few things in Offbeat Racer that probably still need a little bit of patching up. But again, these are not in any way, shape, or form critiques of the current work. I am so impressed, pun intended, hyper impressed with the current performance of Hyper Neo Geo 64 in MAME. I never thought it'd get to be this good, but we are 100% here in the day and age where you can play every single Hyper Neo Geo 64 game in MAME. There is an asterisk to that though, and I will explain it in a little bit. Now moving on to Samurai Shodown 64 2, or Samurai Shodown Warriors Rage if you're in America. This was one of the games that I said was basically performing flawlessly on the original video, and there is no change here to make it any worse. There are some small graphical improvements, but honestly you would need to be eagle-eyed to see them. Some slight filtering things where transparencies were doing different things to the actual models that happened on real hardware that weren't happening on MAME have been plugged in, but that's for the pixel peepers among you. If you never played the original hardware, you probably would have no idea it was supposed to be different, but it is impressive and an attention to detail to have these things working right in the current build of MAME. And again, these aren't easy games to find and they are expensive, so having them here is incredible. But if we move over to original hardware, you can see that outside of the fact that my original captures are slightly darker, trying to see the difference between MAME versus real hardware is becoming extremely difficult. The only time you're going to notice the difference is when you put them side by side, and you do see that there is that speed difference. That just does continue to happen every time I sync a shot up with a constant like the samurai sword going through that kanji text there. We do get into the gameplay quicker on MAME than we do on original hardware. But if you didn't watch this video, you would probably have no idea, because I have the ability in DaVinci Resolve to go ahead and set every single frame exactly where I want it, and then compare the two sources. If you were just playing this or watching a video of it, you would have no idea that you get into the game on MAME maybe like a tenth of a second quicker than you would on original hardware. But of course accuracy is the goal, and I'm sure that will be tightened up in the future. But the great part is, just like the previous video, Samurai Shodown 64 2 is 100% playable from start to finish. The controls are great, the performance is there, and the graphics have slightly improved from the last video. Nothing so dramatic like Buriki One, but this is a game that's very difficult to experience, and it's one that you should 100% check out, and you absolutely can do that in the current build of MAME, and I really do applaud all of that work. Now, of course, if there's a Samurai Shodown 2, that means there's a Samurai Shodown as well, and this is starting on the original hardware capture. This is my preferred game of the two, and this is one that I played a ton more than Warriors Rage, so I'm very familiar with it, its performance, and just generally how it should be running. Now let's go side by side again, because I do love those comparisons, and outside of the speed difference here with this character falling out of the sky, The first frame that he appears on is where I lock that cut, and you will see that everything does happen like a tenth of a second quicker. Technically it is 16 frames by my count, so it's probably closer to like a half a second, but honestly as I look at it in my eyes it is harder to tell. But it just looks great. The heads up display is exactly where it's supposed to be. All of the effects are there. It's just a brighter image because it's a capture not out of a super gun on original hardware. But like I said, you wouldn't be able to spot many, if any, differences if I wasn't showing them to you. And again, this is just another spectacular situation where the emulation has been cleaned up and slightly improved. Some of the layering effects are better, some of the filtering effects are better, but some instances of the Hyper Neo Geo 64's capabilities were only used once in one game. So if you are the developer for MAME, you need to find out what those do and how they work for one single effect. Now I will say, I don't know why, but the same files I used for the previous video for Fatal Fury Wild Ambition do not launch in this version of MAME, so honestly I'm sure it's just a little clerical fix that needs to be taken care of, but at this point in time, it's not a game that I was able to play. But then again, I also didn't spend an hour trying to make it run because I had something else to do. But the fact that Buriki One is 100% playable in MAME is absolutely spectacular. This is an incredible game, and I just had a friend in Japan that saw an original cabinet that they were going to have a tournament on 3 days later. It is still a popular game some places in the world, and it's one that you should 100% check out. But the takeaway is Hyper Neo Geo emulation is getting so much better, and I'm so excited. See you guys next time. Bye bye.